When the South Korean entertainment world seemed calm on the surface, a news slowly infiltrated and disturbed the peace of the fans. There was no official announcement, no live broadcast, not even a clear clue from the agency. However, it is precisely in that silence that great speculation was born. Army around the world began to wonder in the same tone. What exactly is behind the closed meeting between Jungkook and V? The first source came not from the big media, but from small pieces that seemed trivial. A vague upload on social media, a location that was accidentally detected, to a brief testimony from people who happened to be in the same place. Nothing is really certain, but it all leads to one point. Jungkook and Taehyung meet in private, without the camera spotlight, without a public presence. What makes the situation even hotter is not just the fact that they met, but the way the meeting was held. In the world of K-pop that is very transparent towards idol activities, a secret meeting like this feels awkward. Usually, every interaction between BTS members, no matter how small, will be shared content with fans. But this time, everything feels different, as if there was something to be hidden, or at least not ready to be revealed. The fans began to dig deeper. They recalled the last interaction between Jungkook and Taehyung in public. A slightly suppressed smile, a gaze that is difficult to interpret, to small moments that now feel like they have a bigger meaning. Is this just an ordinary meeting between two old friends? Or is there an important conversation that no one wants to know? Over time, speculation develops into various directions. Some believe that this is an emotional moment, perhaps a personal conversation related to their increasingly complex career journey. Jungkook, who is known as a perfectionist figure with the burden of global expectations on his shoulders, and Taehyung, who often shows a deep artistic and emotional side, are not two simple individuals. When they choose to meet in private, many are convinced that the conversation is not a light thing. However, there are also those who see the other side. Some industry observers assess that this meeting could be related to future projects. In an industry full of strategies like K-pop, meetings without publication are often a sign that something big is being prepared. Is this a new collaboration? Or is it an important decision that will affect BTS's future direction? What makes this situation even more dramatic is the silence from the agency, HYBE. There is no clarification, no rebuttal, not even a neutral statement. In a world where every rumor is usually handled immediately, HYBE's silence actually strengthens suspicion. As if they chose to let speculation develop, or perhaps they themselves were not ready to speak. On the other hand, Army is divided in the way they respond to this situation. Some choose to stay calm, believing that whatever Jungkook and Taehyung do must have a good reason. However, not a few feel anxious. They are worried that this meeting indicates that something is wrong, something that has not been seen behind the smiles of the idols. The fans' emotions peaked when several anonymous accounts began to claim to know the details of the meeting. They talked about a serious atmosphere, long conversations, some even mentioned tension. Of course, the truth of these claims is difficult to verify, but in the digital world, rumors often spread faster than facts. Interestingly, in the midst of all this speculation, both Jungkook and Taehyung remain silent. There are no uploads that directly allude to the meeting. There are no codes that they usually give to fans. This silence feels different, deeper, heavier, as if there is something that they are really processing personally. For some people, this is a reminder that behind the glitter of the stage and the spotlight of the camera, they are still ordinary people with personal lives that cannot always be shared. But for Army, who are used to feeling close to their idols, this distance feels strange. They want to understand, want to know, want to make sure that everything is okay. The biggest question that now hangs is, will we ever know the truth behind this meeting? Or will this be one of the mysteries that only the two of them know? As time goes by, one thing becomes clearer. This meeting, whatever the purpose, has left a big impact. Not only in the fans, but also in the way we see the relationship between Jungkook and Taehyung. Will this strengthen their bond? Or does it actually mark an unexpected change? In the midst of all these questions, one thing is certain. The world is waiting. Waiting for an explanation, a gesture, or even just a smile that can ease all suspicions. Until that time comes, speculation will continue to live, grow, and perhaps become a bigger story than the reality itself. But what makes the situation even more difficult to ignore is not only about the meeting itself, but what happened after that. Time passed, the day changed, but the atmosphere among the fans did not really return to normal. There is something left behind, a hanging feeling that cannot be explained with simple logic. And precisely there, this mystery begins to feel deeper. Some observant army began to notice small changes that were almost invisible. Not a big conspicuous change, but subtle details that can only be captured by those who have really followed Jungkook and V's every move for a long time. The way Jungkook chose to be silent longer than usual on the broadcast, or how Taehyung seemed to be more immersed in an unpredictable expression. All became an endless analysis material and no one dared to conclude for sure, but many began to feel that the meeting was not something that could be taken lightly. As if there is a conversation that opens something that has been stored for a long time. Something that may have never been talked about openly before. On the other hand, the narrative that is developing among fans is starting to change. If previously speculation was more inclined towards projects or big plans, now the direction of the conversation is starting to shift to something more personal. Some are starting to question whether the global pressure they have faced so far has finally reached a certain point. The world knows them as part of the unshakable BTS, but behind that image, they are still human beings who feel tired, doubtful, and maybe fragile. In one of the viral discussions, a fan wrote that sometimes the quietest meeting is the most honest. That sentence spread quickly, as if representing the feelings of many people. That maybe the closed meeting is not about hiding something from the world, but about finally opening something to each other. But of course, not everyone sees it the same way. There are also those who think that this speculation has gone too far. They remind that not everything should be used as public consumption, that privacy is something that should be respected, even for idols as big as Jungkook and Taehyung. But ironically, precisely because there is no clarity, this debate continues to live. Meanwhile, the silence from HYBE still continues. There is not a single statement that can ease or direct public opinion. In many cases, silence can be a strategy. But in a situation like this, silence actually feels like a fuel that makes curiosity even bigger. Some observers even begin to see this phenomenon as something broader than just the meeting of two individuals. This is a picture of how the relationship between idols and fans has changed. On the one hand, the closeness that has been built over the years makes every small change feel significant. But on the other hand, there are boundaries that cannot always be seen clearly, the boundary between what you want to share and what you want to keep. And in the midst of all this, Jungkook and Taehyung still walk on their respective paths. They still appear, continue to work, continue to show the same professionalism as before. But for those who pay close attention, there are different nuances that are difficult to ignore. Not something that can be explained in words, but enough to make people wonder, is this just a temporary phase? Or is this the beginning of a bigger change? Some theories even began to develop in a more dramatic direction. Some mention the possibility of differences in views, some imagine emotional conversations that are full of honesty, maybe even conflicts that must be faced in the end. Of course, all of this is just speculation. But in a world filled with curiosity, speculation often becomes a story that lives by itself. Interestingly, in the midst of all this noise, there is not a single concrete evidence that can really confirm what really happened. There is no recording, no direct statement, no truly credible witness. Only small pieces put together by collective imagination. And maybe that's where the strength of this story lies. Because sometimes, the unknown has a much greater attraction than the obvious. The closed meeting between Jungkook and Taehyung has turned into more than just a fact. He becomes a symbol, becomes a question, becomes an empty space filled with various possibilities. Until finally, it all comes back to one simple but difficult to answer. Do we really need to know?